Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeremy Smith, and I'm with Grand Station's online education team, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, which is Nonprofit Recruitment, Attracting Top Talent. And your presenter for today will be Autumn Joyce from Cultivate Advisors, and she'll be assisted by Dan Purdy, also from Cultivate Advisors. And let me tell you a little bit about today's presenter before we begin. Autumn Joyce is a partner and cohort leader at Cultivate Advisors, where she serves as a coach and mentor for other advisors. To her clients, she is the trusted confidant and business advisor she wished for when she was an entrepreneur. And today, she is your confidant. Here she is, Autumn Joyce.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for that warm welcome. And thank you, Grand Station, for having me today. I've been really excited to talk about this topic. Recruiting is near and dear to me. I have spent 25 years recruiting people across different industries, and it is probably one of the areas where I get the most questions about from both my business owners and our nonprofit clients. So we'll get started today as soon as I figure out how to make my clicker work. So the first thing I just want to do is stop and just ask each and everyone to do a quick chat in. What is the one thing that you were hoping to learn today? You're all here to learn about recruiting, but what is the one thing that you were hoping to learn today? If you were hoping to learn nothing, that's kind of scary. All right, I see we have a quiet, oh, there we go. Yes, best practices. Oh, very nice. So as you guys are doing this, I'm going to introduce Cultivate Advisors. So Cultivate Advisors is an organization that helps businesses and organizations experience their vision, and we partner with committed entrepreneurs and organizational leaders in propelling their organizations beyond their expectations. So we as advisors work with our clients on helping them grow both the capacity sides of their organizations and the growth sides of their organizations. So I work with both for-profits and nonprofits. And people are always asking me, what is a business advisor doing talking to nonprofit clients? And from my experience, many of the strategies and things that we use to help for-profit businesses grow and scale are also really important for nonprofit businesses to help them grow their organizations as well. So here I am again, that's my glam shot. Had to get my hair done that day, certainly not today. So again, I'm a partner and a senior advisor here at Cultivate. I've been here for 3.5 years. And Dan Purdy also joins me. He is one of our director of partnerships, and Dan's going to be manning the Q&A. So if you have any questions, he's going to be answering them in that Q&A section. And he's also going to be saving some of the questions for me to answer at the end. So also at the end, and I'll give you Dan's email again, we will be offering some of our free resources around the recruitment that we're talking about today. These are just 2 examples. We have many. Like I said, we talk about recruiting and helping solve recruiting issues at all ends of the spectrum. So why we're here today. Really what we're doing here today is to help you all focus on your recruiting brand and efforts. So we're going to be focused today on branding as a recruiting mechanism. Our outcomes are hopefully that you will find 1 or 2 ideas that you can implement immediately into your recruiting branding, and that you can identify some sort of barrier to entry that you might be able to remove so that you're able to find and entice top talent to your organization. So this is part of our agenda today. So today is about, today isn't about, are you ready to hire, or do you know who you need to hire? And if you find that we're not answering the questions that you're seeking today, please let us know by reaching out to us, either even putting a question in the Q&A, and Dan can get back to you and provide you tools and resources to answer the questions that we might not be covering about recruiting today. Recruiting is a huge topic, and there are a lot of different segments that go along with recruiting in the entire funnel, everywhere from how to get candidates to enter into your hiring funnel, all the way to how do you retain good employees in your organization, and tons of things in between. But today specifically, we're going to talk about when you're hiring, how do you brand your mission, your visions, your value, and your culture, and so that you can entice candidates and get their attention to apply. And, I'm not just talking about the candidates. I'm also talking about using these same tools to find volunteers. Many of the ways that we brand ourselves for recruiting can also be used to brand ourselves to get volunteers to come into our organization. We want to make sure that you're positioned in a good spot so that when you do put ads out there or job postings out there, that you're getting attention, and that attention is getting people who are of like quality that you're looking for and skill set to apply. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today as we jump in is the job description as a marketing tool. And oftentimes when I talk to my clients and talk to people that are looking to hire, we oftentimes start right here with the job description. People say to me, Autumn, I'm having a really hard time making sure that I'm getting the right candidate. I get all these applications, and it's like sometimes I wonder if people are even reading the job description. And so oftentimes I'll ask them straight at the first part, I'll say, hey, give me your job description and let's read through it. And what I find is that this is the place where people often go wrong. They're not using it as a way to brand themselves as the employer that they want people to see them as. So first off, your job description is the first impression that anyone has of you. It's the first impression they have of your organization, what you stand for, who you're looking for, and that impression matters. You want to make sure that you capture their attention and it says, yes, I want to work for these people. This is going to be their first interaction with you. People's first interactions count. Think about, what are you portraying in that job description? If you were reading this as the first time of someone that didn't know anything about your organization, your mission, your vision, your values, what you are trying to do, how would they see you? Are you portraying exactly what you want people to see you as? Think of them like a customer, or think of them like the part of the segment of people that you are trying to help and reach through your organization. If you think of them as someone that you are trying to reach, almost like you're marketing to them, you are much more likely to get their attention. So ask yourself, what do you want to portray in that first interaction, in that first look at your organization? What do you want to portray to that candidate? What is your brand? And when you talk about brand, most people are like, well, we're a nonprofit organization. Like, what does that mean? What's my brand? But if you think about how you talk about yourself in your strategic planning meetings and how you talk about yourself with your volunteers, think about what it is that you are trying to portray to the people that you want to work for you in terms of who you are. What do you stand for? Because it's those people that are going to be attracted to working for you. You want to take every opportunity along the hiring funnel, along the employee experience, in order for you to sell them your organization. And people are like, sell them your organization. It sounds kind of cheesy. But if you think about, you are in competition for talent that is at the top of the industry. And if you want that top talent to come and work for you, you need to sell to them why they would want to do that. And so if you think about the first step of this process, the job posting, where their first interaction with you, where their first time that they come in contact with you, where they're getting a sense of your brand, who you are, what you stand for, again, your mission, your vision, your values, all of that should be portrayed so that you can sell that job in the initial job posting. And then once you've done that in the job posting, you can continue to weave that into every other part of the process. So most of us know right now that the employee market is pretty dominated by the candidate. There are a lot of employers that are seeking top talent, and that is getting harder and harder to find people to join your organization that meet the criteria that you're looking for. Because of this, we have to get tighter and tighter about how we present ourselves at the beginning of the funnel. You are in competition to get people's eyeballs and attention in your job postings. So candidates, they obviously have a choice in where they agree to work. And the key here is they agree to work. You want to give them every reason you can to agree to work for you. So when I think about branding, you know, I always tell my clients to really sit down and be intentional. And I think that nonprofits do a really good job of being incredibly intentional about why they are in the work that they're in. They have well thought out missions, visions, values. They can articulate them very well. But when it comes to actually being intentional about that same branding toward the people that they're hiring, or at the front end of the hiring funnel during the job posting, I find that people sort of miss the mark. They're not taking advantage of the tools that they've already built in order to be able to get some of this top talent's attention. If you think about all the time you've spent in strategic planning with your board members and your leadership teams, or maybe it's just fellow volunteers within your organization, you've exhausted and worked through organizations, your mission and your vision. We should be using that same intention toward our branding when we build those things that are going to introduce our organization to our future talent. That same branding in terms of how we're speaking to our future talent can be used not only in job postings, but it can be used in social media. It can be used in newsletters that go out. You never know when you're going to come in contact with a future employee. In fact, you should be always thinking that anybody you come in contact with could eventually be a future employee or maybe a future volunteer. So the branding and how you present yourself to your future employees should be really intentional and interwoven in everything that you do. So I really like these couple of examples. These are job descriptions. And I think this first one is a good example of one that isn't to par. And so it's really basic, right? It basically has like the summary of the job, your minimum qualifications. It's like most of the things you see if you pull up Indeed or ZipRecruiter, or most of the things maybe you see on LinkedIn or all the other job boards out there. It does nothing to really say, who am I as an organization? What do I stand for? And who is really the person inside that I'm looking to hire? It does a pretty good job of listing skills, but hiring someone and finding the right candidate and making that match is so much more than just a set of skills. Another one that I think is pretty bland and actually really short. And another one where it's just, there's just absolutely nothing about Anything that stands out to a potential employee. Some better examples. So in this one, we're talking about a company that has America's favorite travel destination. So we're starting to talk about who we are as an organization. We're talking now about our benefits and what we offer as an employer. We've shortened the requirements to just the things that are the most important. We're getting a little better. Even better is when we can start to actually summarize who we are as an organization or as a company and what we're doing as an organization to support the people that we're serving. We're starting to give a description of the work that we're doing. So when someone reads the job description, they're starting to read about us as an organization. It then elicits them to actually go out and research us more because we are starting to get them to have interest in us. We're taking the step for them to say, this is an interesting organization. It really resonates with me. I'm going to learn more about this. So if we think about this in terms of every step along the way, the job posting should be something that interests people. It should speak to the organization. It should be something that talks about not only who they are in terms of their skills, but who they are in terms of their soft skills. And then how do we then weave that into all the other places along the path? So the job posting brings them in, but then during the rest of the interview process, we have to continue to engage them in ways that tell them about who you are as an organization and why they want to work for you. So if you'd stop and think right now about your interview process or your hiring process, I call it a hiring funnel. People come into the funnel at the job posting, and then they work their way through, all the way through the onboarding, and then they're in the organization through retention and development plans and keeping them engaged. And if you stopped and think about each one of these along the way, where do you think that you are the strongest in speaking to your employees or your volunteers as to why they would want to work for you or stay working for you? How are you selling this top talent at each step along the way? And where are you the strongest and why? I just want you to take a mental note of that. Where are you the strongest and why are you the strongest in this particular area? And then at the same time, I want you to think of the opposite side of the spectrum. Where do you feel like in this funnel that you have the most opportunity for growth? Where do you feel like maybe at one part of this funnel that you feel like, I'm really not doing anything to really sell my organization as a place where someone's really going to want to work and conveying what it is about us that makes us stand out and special? Take note of that as well. So you have the place that you feel like you're the strongest and why, and the place that you feel like you have the most opportunity for growth or the weakest and why. I'm going to stop there for a second and just want everybody to take note. If they want to share in the chat about where they feel like they were the strongest or the weakest, this would be a good opportunity. This would also be an excellent opportunity if you have questions about any one of these particular areas, or if you feel like you want resources around how to identify best practice or process in these areas, or need more information about what these areas are. If you're looking at this going, wow, what does that mean? What is a full interview process? go ahead and put it in the Q&A. Dan might answer you directly, or he might say, let me get back to you and I can provide the rest of that information by email to you. But this would be a good time to just take note of where you feel like you need the most support. And I guarantee you, everybody needs support in some part of this hiring funnel. If you don't, then I've got a job for you, because we're looking for advisors. No, I'm kidding. I had to throw that in. I'm a jokester too. All right, I'm going to keep moving. All right, on to selling to top candidates. All right, your interview, the interview process. How many of you have ever been to an interview where the person interviewing you did not leave the best impression? I know I have. And, you know, Tina raised her hand. I got somebody that's like, yeah, that person didn't leave the best impression. And, you know, honestly, we always go into this with the best intentions. And I've been guilty of this before too. I interview advisors quite a bit to come and join our organization. And at times, I admit I am not the most prepared. I either like got really busy and forgot to like get ready, but you know, I strive to be my best. But you really have to think about this going into it. This is your opportunity to shine. This is your opportunity to really figure out why it is that this person wants to work for you, and how are you going to meet their motivation and their why so they want to come and work for you. So when I think about the interview process and having an interview with someone, you know, it should be a professional setting. Obviously, no large coffee shops, but that professional setting should actually be pretty relaxed. You want that interviewee to feel as though they can open up and be themselves during that process. The more open they are and the more comfortable are, the more they are going to share with you, the more they're going to learn from you, and the better opportunity that you have to engage with them about why your organization is the organization that they want to join. Make sure that you're dressed appropriately, be prepared, be on time. Oh my gosh, how many of you have ever been to an interview where the person interviewing you was late? I mean, that's just the worst. That's talk about a bad like tone that you're setting. I mean, your employee is going to forever think that it's okay to be like late to work. And make sure that you always deliver on your promises. Think about that for a second. If you say to the interviewee, God, can't get that right. If you say to the interviewee, hey, you know what, I'm going to get back to you next week with the next steps. Make sure you get back to them about the next steps. They're interviewing for a job. This is so important to them. It makes a difference. So many organizations and businesses don't do these simple things. If you do these simple things, you will stand out. And always, always create opportunities to be able to follow up and deliver on those promises. You will set a forever impression. So many of you probably are remembering interviews that just went totally bad, and you probably didn't go to work for the organization. You probably remember that organization. Be remembered for the good things. If you stand out in these ways, you are one step ahead of all the other organizations that are interviewing the same person. This is one of my favorites. Appropriate sharing. Oversharing is overwhelming. I like to say that during an interview process, you should be speaking about 30%. Yes, 30%. So that's asking the questions, and then it's also getting the questions from them that they haven't answering them, and it's selling the organization. And you do all of that in the 30% of the speaking, because you want to learn as much as you can about this individual. In order to do this, you have to be prepared. You have to know what you want to sell to this person, how you want to brand yourself. You need to go in there with a certain set of questions, and you are ready to go. And then 70% of the talking is them. This is not about you. It is about them. So you want to focus on the fit. Just going to add these all up here so we can read them all at the same time. So the first priority is really about whether or not this is a fit for them. And you're like, wait a minute, why? I'm interviewing them. Why am I worried about if it's a fit for them? I'm interviewing them to see if it's a fit for me. Flip it around. Change your thinking on this. This isn't necessarily about you. Remember, this is about them choosing you. Now, if they are choosing you, you are going to learn about that, but not the other way around. So you want to figure out, is this a fit for them or not? You want to be honest with them about what kind of job this is. What are they going to encounter when they come into your organization? Put it on the table. Talk about the highlights and what you want to accomplish and all the great things, but also be honest about those things that sometimes might be a little rough. Like maybe your data isn't all together. I mean, I was talking to someone earlier today that we were discussing having a fundraising person come into their organization, and they're like, well, I don't know what to say. Like our CRM's a mess. And I'm like, well, you got to be sure to tell them that, because they're going to find out when they join the organization. So they might as well know before they make the decision. It's being honest with them. Is this a fit for them? And be honest if it is, or if it's not. It's okay. You're better off putting it all out on the table early on rather than finding something out later. Well, the benefits, they're right there. Person's happy, they're going to be around for a long time, there's performance, and it adds to your culture. If you're not focused on their fit with you, is it a fit for them? Then you're not going to have these things later. So we're back to my funnel again. We've seen the interview process. We've seen the job posting. We must be on the follow-up. So the follow-up, I think this is one of the places where organizations, companies, business owners, executive directors, hiring directors, whoever it is the person in charge of hiring, really misses the mark. It's the follow-up piece that really speaks volumes about who you are as an organization, how you value your employees, and how you value people's time and energy. I think one of the most important things, one of the most things that makes people stand out the most during the process is when you are actually articulate what the steps of the process are. What should this person be expecting next? Is it a 3-interview process? Should it take 2 weeks? Should it take a week? What is in front of them in terms of the hurdles that they are going to have to make? How long is that process going to take? So they know, because they're thinking it. I mean, I'm sure you all have applied for a role before and are wondering, gosh, I wonder how long this interview process is going to take. I mean, I know when I interviewed here at Cultivate, it's one of the longest interview processes I've ever been through, but it was great. They told me exactly what I was going to expect, and then they stuck with it. I wasn't even looking for a job. I was one of the best recruiters I've ever come in contact with. She had me hooked. She stepped through all the things. She followed up with me consistently. She was always checking to make sure that I still saw myself as a fit for this organization. Make sure you keep your candidates warm. That means you never go more than 48 hours with having some sort of connection. Yes, I said 48 hours. Some of you might think, what are you going to say every 48 hours? Send them an article about you. Send them some sort of material that they could read about your organization so they can learn more. Send them things about your volunteers. Send them something. Check in on them. And always, always call them when you decline. It is common courtesy. And you would be surprised how many people will say to you that no one's ever done that, or that most people don't take that time, because now they're going to, even if you decline them for the job, they are going to speak volumes about your organization and how you represent yourself. And it matters. People talk. I think the other one that I would add to this is that, you know, when you're in this follow-up process and you're going through each step in the interview process, I like to make sure that they always are tracking exactly where they are. So we say, like, what are the steps in the interview process? I like to make sure that they know, okay, we've done step 1 through 3, you're now on 4. Remember, you have 2 more to go. And so I'm always communicating with them and keeping them engaged. I also let them know, which isn't on here, which I'll add, is I also let them know that, you know, if you are seeking other opportunities other than this, which I expect you are because you are interviewing, if you get to the point where you need to make a decision, please reach out to me and let me know. Because that gives me the ability to take some action. I might not take any action and wish them luck, but it gives me the ability to take action. And this becomes more and more important the further you are in the actual process. If you're really far down the line and you're at some of these last interviews that you're doing, you want to make sure that you keep these people warm and that they know that if they need to make a decision, they're going to contact you, because you would hate to lose out and not even know you're about to lose out. All right, you know where we are. We hit the follow-up. All right, I'm going to take a breath for a moment. I've just covered a lot of material. It's always like that in these webinars. That's, I guess, why we video them and then give you the deck as well. So what's the one thing that you wanted to take away from this section that I have covered so far and implement immediately? So we've talked about, I'm here right now, I'm up to the follow-up. I'm up into the point where you would hire someone. So onboarding and development in another class. So in this front end of the interview process, what is the one thing that you want to take away from this section and implement immediately in your organization? Follow up every 48 hours. Yeah, I love that one. Hiring process in the email. Yep. Updating your job descriptions. Yes. And I always talk, I work a lot sometimes with the trade industries, which obviously isn't a nonprofit, but I remember working with this handyman group a couple years ago, and their job description was just awful. It was like literally like 4 sentences or 5 sentences, and they would just post it on Indeed. And I just remember saying to these 2 guys, I'm like, you guys, this job description thing, like, we have got to make this more sexy. I'm like, this thing should read like the handyman job is the sexiest job on earth. And they just couldn't stop laughing at me. But it's true. You got to give it some color. Yes, job descriptions are the roadmap to success. Thank you, Dan. You are right. Yeah, we need to change our job descriptions to be like your best examples. Yeah, you know, and I have a lot of examples of great job descriptions and templates that help nonprofits and businesses sort of craft what they want to do, because each one is different. There's no standard job description. Each one is, you know, totally unique to you and your organization. But I think that there's definitely some best practices. And if you'd like any of those things, again, Dan's here, he's in the Q&A. You can connect with him, and I'll have his email address again toward the end. All right. So this next part is around removing unnecessary barriers to entry. You know, I was having this really interesting conversation recently with one of our newer clients, and they were having a really hard time getting people to answer the questions that they had included in their like LinkedIn posting, you know, when you like post a job on LinkedIn and you can have them like answer all of these questions, like they have to take a quiz or whatever before they can hit submit. And they were really upset because they just couldn't get people to like answer these questions. And I stopped and I was like, I'm like, why are you asking those questions? Can't you just figure out those questions in their resume? And then the new client just kind of stopped and said, well, yeah, but I want them to fill it out. And I'm like, well, they're not filling it out. So maybe all you're doing is creating a barrier to entry, because think about all the people that just refuse to fill them out or refuse to even click submit because they were frustrated. So that's a good segue into removing barriers to entry. All right. So I want you guys to stop and think again for a moment. Put your thinking caps on. And when I talk about barriers to entry, and you think about your hiring funnel all the way to job offer, not onboarding, but just job offer. So posting a job all the way to job offer. What do you think are some of the barriers to entry that might be in your hiring process? Can you think of anything that's in your hiring process that could be a barrier to entry? And I think oftentimes there's, people come up with all sorts of things. But I think that thinking about our own hiring process and what could that barrier of entry be is a good start. Here are some of the examples that I've come across in my experience. So, and I'll say this first is sometimes some roles require some of these things. And I'm not speaking about those roles. I'm talking about sometimes if we ask ourselves, is a college degree really necessary for this job, or are we just listing that right now? Is it really important for a person to be remote or in an office, or can it be both? Do they have to have the experience of certain software? I mean, when we really get down to it and we start thinking about the skill set and the things that we need from a candidate in order to be a good applicant, are we really being kind of true to what we actually truly bottom line need? Or are we listing things because it looks good? And granted, you obviously do not want one of your, chief scientists not having a PhD. I mean, that would be ridiculous, right? But I think if we're really honest with ourselves, we probably do put in some things in our job postings, or like this new client of ours, having them list questions or answer questions in a job posting that might just be a box to check that's not really necessary. And all we're really doing is adding a barrier to entry that is really just sort of putting a block between you and getting someone to apply. And I use this, I'll go back this way, the cover letter. This is my favorite one. I get so many people. My day, I'm about to turn 50, so I just aged myself. If I could even imagine a day where you would apply for a professional job without a cover letter, you couldn't even believe that it was a thing. I help people hire every day. And when I see the applicants that are coming through their job postings, no one does a cover letter. It's mind-boggling to me. I'm like, I have to stop myself because I'm putting my own bias on this. I asked my 23-year-old stepson the other day, why doesn't anyone do cover letters anymore? And they're like, why? Nobody does that. It's ridiculous. That's so old. I was like, great. Now I'm old too. My point is that in this cover letter example, do we really need it? Or can we replace it with something that's a bit more engaging? Can we redefine what we're looking for and really say, why do we need this? Why do we want this? And maybe we can take the cover letter and actually describe yourself in 3 words instead. I actually thought that was kind of a good idea. So now I'm trying to change the way that I'm thinking about it because, honestly, I'm Gen X. I come in contact with a lot of people who are millennial, Gen Z, and I don't even know if there's one after that now. Maybe there is. That look at all of this very, very differently than I do, and that are of a different generation that has different ways of applying for jobs, interacting with an interview process. And we have to stop and ask ourselves, are we in a position, have we removed the barriers to entry that are going to sway those people from applying? I know here at Cultivate, we've actually looked at our interview process to start to try to define some of this stuff. Like, it's not just Gen Xers anymore. It's not just millennials anymore. I mean, millennials are actually getting old at this point, right? We're getting older. So in your interview process, are there things in your process that could be construed as barriers to entry? I think the cover letter is probably the best example of them all. Yeah, it's artificial intelligence. All right. I always think this is a really good quote. And I think honestly that nonprofits do a much better job, or I think as a whole, it's a broad brush I'm about to paint, but I think nonprofits do a really good job of recognizing accommodations and really looking at their process and making sure that it's inclusive. But I think it's worth the time and the energy and the exercise to really look at your process as a whole and to find where there might be some steps that or barriers or things that you're asking for that aren't really necessary, and you might be able to get them in different ways and you would reach different audiences. All right, I'm getting down to the end, which is good because I got some time for questions. And this is pretty simple. How to stand out and recruit with empathy. And I use this infograph, I think is what we call it, an infograph, as a way to communicate this. I like to always start with the fact that you treat your candidates like they're your customers, or you treat your candidates like they are the people you are trying to serve. How do you want them to relate to you and interact with you? And that is your brand. At its core, how you want to treat your candidates is just like how you would want to treat the people you interact with and serve. Is the interview process a two-way street? Are they choosing you just as much as you're choosing them? There should be no surprises at any stage. That's in compensation, it's in what are they going to be really working with and dealing with within the organization, the good, the bad, the challenging. You want to show that you value their time by being prepared at all segments of the interview process. They are taking their time to interview your organization so that they can spend a large majority of their time in your organization working with you and helping you propel it forward. Look at it as they are spending time on you, not you're spending time on them. And always, always follow up with all candidates. It is personal. Interviewing for a job, going through the job search process, it is personal. Treat it like you care, even if you're declining. All right. So I want to thank you for being here. But before you go and run off, because I know that you all guys do when you start to see it's the end, I want to remind you that we do have resources. I haven't been able to watch the Q&A while we've been going through this. This is Dan Purdy. He has been answering your questions and making notes while I've been speaking. Dan is one of our directors of partnerships. He's sort of the person that connects with all of you and gets you to the right people in our organization to give you the resources you need. And then we also have the ability to schedule what we call our free advising session. And the information is on your screen, as well as Dan's email address. And if you want to contact him too, you can put anything you need to into the Q&A. And I'll just leave this on the screen. And Dan, did you have any questions that you wanted me to answer while we have a little bit more time?
I did. And before I get to a really good question that was posed earlier in the conversation, I just wanted to point out that Cultivate Advisors is a very generous company. We gift a lot of our time up front. And if you would like to get to know Autumn a little bit better, you can see on the screen here that you can schedule a free advising session. And what that looks like is we're going to help you to really help your nonprofit make a larger impact, talk to you about your recruiting, how things are going with your sales, getting donations and grants and all of the rest. We would love to talk with you and to learn more about your organization and your specific needs. The free guidance that we have is for those nonprofits that are bringing in over $500,000 per year. We need to have something to manage and something to talk about. And so I would love to talk with you on a brief call, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and then get to know you a little bit, and then would love to introduce you to Autumn from there. Autumn, one of the questions that came in earlier was, does everything we're talking about really apply to volunteers?
Yeah.
And why or why not?
You know what? Yes, I think it does. Actually, I mean, obviously, you're not going to put together such a complicated interview process for a volunteer. But if you think about all of the things that I just talked about, volunteers at their core are coming to work for you and joining your cause and your mission for free. That relationship that they have with you is like they are purely giving of themselves. And so we would want to treat them in the same way throughout the entire process. And by doing that, and by establishing that type of relationship, by leading through empathy and understanding why they're there, and understanding, and making sure that they understand what they are getting involved in and what is the process in order to get involved, you're building a relationship with them and you're building a brand with them that then they're going to share with everybody they know, which brings you more volunteers. You're just building on it. It's those volunteers are your brand, even more so than your employees, because they're doing it for free. They're out there on the front lines doing it for free. Did I answer that question thoroughly enough? Yes, absolutely. And I would love, if whoever asked that question, I would love to talk more about it. I work and I've talked with a lot of nonprofits about how to recruit and bring in volunteers to work with them, because it's so important for most of your guys' organizations to be able to entice people to work with you like that. Any other questions, Dan, before we bounce off? You're on mute. There you go.
I'm just checking the chat again. It looks like that's all we had. There was a question about, hey, what if my nonprofit is less than $500,000 per year? What would that look like? And
yeah. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have a wonderful program for companies that are building and growing. And Autumn can talk more about our 3X Incubator Bootcamp.
Yeah, so we anything for businesses and nonprofits that are under the 500,000 mark, we have a group program that is essentially meant to accelerate your growth so that you can meet that next benchmark. And it is modeled after just like our one-on-one advising, but this one basically brings you in a group setting. It's 12 weeks long, and we can provide any, information on it to you if you'd like. And I think that the other option for organizations under 500, if there are specific questions or specific needs that you want additional resources for, we are more than happy to send those to you. We have so much on this topic. It's unbelievable. All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for your time today and joining us. And Jeremy, thanks so much for having us today.
Of course, it's my pleasure to have you here. And actually, one thing I wanted to just point out really quickly, you mentioned earlier that you have a lot of resources. Are those all available on the Cultivated Advisors website? Is that where people could find more information?
Yeah, so we do have some free resources on the Cultivate Advisors website. And then there's also things that we just like when people ask us direct questions about things that they're experiencing or they're having issues with or things they want to solve, we often can just send them things, send them either templates, worksheets, white papers, and we have just a plethora of information. We oftentimes will send recordings of webinars that we had done in the past. We have a whole library of things. And so it really depends on what it is that the person is struggling with or wants more information. So if you don't find it on the Cultivate Advisors website, you're welcome to directly reach out to us.
Visit GrantStation to see our latest online education offerings in the form of live webinars, interactive workshops, and on-demand learning. GrantStation.com, your fast track to funding and online education.